Welcome back, track DIYers. After a long winter break, it's great to be back behind the wheel of my newly swapped Ecotec Miata again. I feel like at the end of last season, I didn't have much of a chance to drive it and get to know its fresh personality with this new, more powerful motor under the hood. But that's not the order of the day. The order of the day is to get ourselves to the tuner shop to have the ECU tweaked and tuned on the dyno to see what kind of power this thing can make. Obviously, I have no illusions that this is going to put down numbers that would impress your typical automotive YouTuber, but if you've been watching the series, you'll know that was never the point. Before we get there though, allow me to indulge myself and recap how I feel about the swap so far. Firstly, I'm slowly getting used to the idea that this DIY garage-built, cobbled-together swap actually fires up and street drives reliably with the turn of a key. It might seem like a given from your side of the screen, but for me, I have a lot of anxiety expecting there to be a giant puddle of fluid under the car or that the engine might spontaneously combust. Secondly, I'm hyper aware that although the car feels very different, in general, it feels very much the same. Besides the obvious before and after differences with the motor, the Miata-ness of this Miata still shines bright, kind of glaring me in the face actually. The diminutive weight of this thing still feels playful and nimble, like an athlete ready to spring into action. And there's more. The steering's light and communicative, and I can't really feel any difference between this Buick Regal hydraulic power steering pump and the original Mazda one. The ACT HDSS clutch feels a touch heavier than the previous stock one. The brakes are unchanged, so they feel identical to before, as they should. And you'd think that the electronic gas pedal would feel numb and unresponsive compared to the cable-driven throttle from before. But no, it responds quickly and snappily. I actually like it a lot. And all this adds up to that short wheelbase, rear-wheel drive feeling of balance and willing control that is the Miata's coolest party trick. Besides this, of course. However, everything's not perfect, as they never are. So here's a list of some things that I've noticed so far that aren't great. Although the custom exhaust system by Fusion Motorsport Fabrication sounds awesome with an understated, deep, throaty burble, the actual noises the Ecotec makes aren't especially evocative or iconic in any way. It's not like the celebrated Honda motors that sing sweet music all the way to 9,000 RPM, or the choppy lope of a cammed pushrod V8. It's more like a boring family sedan making its way through the rev range lazily saying, "Oh, that's what we're doing now? All right, I guess that's okay." Another common criticism of the Ecotec swap is that the engine mounts included in the kit feature some pretty stiff and hard urethane bushings. I've heard some complaints of excessive vibrations, which is true. I do feel some more NVH ringing through the chassis, but around town and on shorter drives, I feel like it's pretty race car. And frankly, with the top down or even just the windows open, I don't even notice it much. But I can't imagine with a hard top or on longer drives, on highway trips, it could get pretty annoying. Let's see, what else? On occasion, I catch an acrid whiff of burning oil, which I think is residual carbon buildup from the previous Malibu owner neglect that's making its way out of the exhaust. The oil pan RTV gasket seems to be sweating a bit of oil, not enough to drip or pool onto the floor, but there's signs of vaporized oil residue on the top of the oil pan box and around the seal, which frankly I wish wasn't there. There's also a bit of power steering fluid that's dripping out from somewhere. I suspect it's those crappy worm gear clamps I used. Eventually I'll need to buy new, higher quality ones and replace them. Although this has nothing to do with the swap, I gotta mention it anyways. My used 6-speed transmission has a slight synchro grind in the second and third, even after thoroughly warming it up, which might mean that it's lived a hard life before it got to me, so that's not ideal. And the biggest annoyance is that the RPMs tend to stick or hang when you apply those brief touch and release blips of throttle, like when you go to creep in traffic. But those things aside, it's now time to hand this thing over to the tuning expert at Champion Motors, Kevin. He comes highly recommended for tuning Corvettes, Camaros, and all manner of high horsepower hardware in my local area, and one of my friends recently had his car tuned by him with excellent results. Being that he's an LS tuning expert, Kevin is very familiar with the E67 ECU, and as soon as he hooked up his laptop, he noticed I had a couple of crossed wires on the map sensor, and that there was a slight leak there as well, which he quickly corrected and set about doing his magic and teasing the potential out of my humble car. I should probably mention that I filled the car with fresh pump 91 octane gas based on his recommendation. Where I live, we don't have convenient access to E85, so that was out of the question, but most gas stations do offer 93 or 94 octane. But to be on the safe side for street driving, he recommended tuning with 91 and using 94 on track for the additional knock protection. But back to the task at hand, I was starting to feel the nerves as he wound the car out on the dyno, doing a pull, making some changes on his computer, and then doing another hard pull. The car was getting a thorough workout, but it handled it all like a warrior, shrugging off each run and asking for more. The suspense was mounting, and in the moment I found my thoughts drifting back to the build. All those long hours in the garage, the busted and bleeding knuckles, the frustrating feelings of dejection and failure, the restless nights of uncertainty when I doubted my own resolve. But this was the time, my time to show what the Ecotec could do. I tried to keep my expectations low, but I've seen what others with the same LE5 motor could make, 160 to 170 wheel horsepower. One of the guys on the EcotecMiata Facebook group recently made a bit higher at 172. But maybe if I was lucky and my motor was strong enough, just maybe I could do even better, and I could post an epic pic to one-up him and finally be the big dog. It made 149.6 horsepower. 149.6. Unexpected. Until next time, you're awesome. I'm useless. Thanks for watching.